Procurement is often treated as an operational function. In this case, it became a multi-billion-dollar financial liability. Today, we are auditing one of the most consequential procurement failures in modern history, the Fat Leonard scandal. Not as a crime story, but as a CFO-level governance failure. This is not about corruption. It is about missing data, weak controls, and unpriced financial risk. This audit focuses on supplier governance and financial exposure. The United States Navy relied heavily on a single logistics supplier for port services across the Asia-Pacific region. On paper, the contracts appeared compliant. Pricing approvals followed established procedures. Invoices were processed through standard procurement workflows. However, procurement decisions were being made without independent price validation, without supplier risk scoring, and without cost-to-serve modeling. This created a structural data gap. A gap where no one could confidently answer a simple financial question. What should this service actually cost? The core failure was not bribery. The core failure was procurement governance design. Key controls were missing. There was no competitive benchmarking across ports, no historical spend normalization, no supplier concentration thresholds tied to financial exposure. Procurement teams approved invoices without validating pricing assumptions. Finance teams relied on procurement data that had never been analytically stress-tested. This is how operational trust becomes financial vulnerability. When procurement lacks analytics, financial exposure compounds silently. Inflated invoices were approved not because they were invisible, but because there was no baseline for expected cost. Small variances passed unnoticed. Repeated approvals normalized abnormal pricing. Over time, these variances accumulated into systemic loss. The estimated financial exposure reached billions of dollars, not because prices were high, but because no one knew what normal looked like. From a CFO perspective, this represents a failure to price risk. Supplier dependency was never reflected in working capital forecasts. It was absent from risk reserves. It was missing from contract safeguard assumptions. Procurement approvals were treated as operational decisions. They were never treated as capital allocation decisions. That distinction matters, because supplier concentration is not an operational issue. It is a balance sheet risk. The corrective action is not increased compliance. It is procurement redefined as a financial control system. A CFO-aligned procurement model requires cost-to-serve algorithms that establish expected pricing ranges. It requires supplier risk scoring directly linked to spend exposure. It requires mandatory variance thresholds that trigger financial review. When procurement data feeds financial forecasting, risk becomes measurable. When risk becomes measurable, it becomes controllable. Procurement is not a cost center. It is a financial risk management engine. When procurement decisions lack data, the balance sheet absorbs the consequences. This audit is not about the past. It is about what your organization may already be missing. Procurement is where financial risk begins.